All right, people, welcome in here. It is now a Tuesday. It is January the 28th. I am Joe Raineri. He is Ralph Michaels, WagerTalk.com. It is another edition of the Happy Hour Tip-Off Show. It is powered by WagerTalk.com. College hoops is what is on our mind. Great slate of games here tonight. We had an interesting card last night. A couple of ACC matchups there last night, along with a Big Ten, of course, and a whole lot of extra games there, Ralph, on the card, including our friends over at Prairie View and the old Mississippi Delta there, which was a classic of all classics. But all in all, last night, I guess we can say that North Carolina's back. Far be it for me to argue. It looks like Roy's got these kids playing now. How do you like that? A win on the road for North Carolina over State.
Well, it sounds like what we just talked about, Joe. They're still decent 3-star and 4-star recruits that have now multiple games under their belt, and we know where the bottom is. On the Wager Talk show on Sports Grid, Teddy and I were talking about it, and I said, I would probably put 4 or 5 teams in the ACC under this current North Carolina team. So you have to remember, again, yes, they may not be without 5-star recruits, but they don't recruit 2-stars. There's still 3 and 4-star recruits there that, again, 7-8 games under their belt. They now have time playing together. They now have time practicing together. They know they're going to be on the court with each other. And it just took them some time to, they were so reliant on the superstar early, Anthony, that it's time they have turned it around. Again, there's many times where, Duke's second team can beat Wake Forest.
Exactly.
Because they practice together, but when they get on the court and gel, you don't have all those first and second teamers together. So, I think, we'll see how long the value lasts on North Carolina. I don't expect it for long because I expect sharps to start buying back into it. But that was lesson learned for me. And, also Kansas, we talked about that, having a couple players suspended, it depends on the situation, and they're not your offensive guys, and defensive guys know they have to step up. And, Oklahoma State's still winless in the Big Ten. And, Kansas was on sale yesterday, being down to only a 7-point favorite.
Yeah, no, they were. And it was the big question always was going to be, all right, was depth going to be an issue? And could Oklahoma State, do their part in scoring enough points to be able to make it a game? But unfortunately, they opened up on a 15-4 run in the second half, Kansas, and it was over from there. But we did have, of course, some big time performances last night, and we mentioned there Mississippi Valley State taking on Prairie View, and Antoine Lister there, Ralph, pretty big night there, 30 points, 6 boards, 2 assists, 4 steals, 1 block, not bad in a day's worth of work.
Yeah, I talked about Eastern Washington, a team that had been disappointing to me. When you see 2020s, I don't know how many times we see a 2020 and then add 7 assists to the mix and 3 blocks. You want to talk about a performance. That's the one that stands out for me with Peatling and Eastern Washington.
Yeah, and so we got 2 Prairie View guys, 2 Eastern Washington guys, and anytime you got a dude named DJ Funderburk, I'm in, man. But unfortunately, NC State on the losing end at home there against North Carolina, and some interesting covers there, of course, too, last night, guys, as maybe the biggest there was North Carolina State. They were getting 6.5. They covered it by 16.5, winning by 10 there, Ralph. And it was just that kind of night last night, as we did, of course, see some of the unders hit, including Oklahoma State. So there was. We did, and of course it wouldn't be an over if we didn't have an asterisk next to a game there. And that Eastern Washington game, yeah, that was a good game too, and a whole bunch of points to go along with it.
It was, and going back to Funderburk, for those that think it sounds familiar, yeah, it's that same DJ Funderburk that was with Ohio State a couple years ago. So, the transfers. The transfers are such a integral part of the college basketball game now, and much, much higher than they've been in the past. That Eastern Washington, Northern Colorado game was, I'm looking to see what it was at halftime.
It was the bad. They were in the 40s.
At finals. They scored 25 points.
Wow.
So, yeah, is it a bad beat? Yeah. Well, that last basket, the under was covering until the last basket tied the game at 74 each with a total of 148. So that's what I was looking to see if that could be considered a bad beat. And it certainly could, because if they missed that last basket of regulation, the game is
it's an under.
74 to 72, and it goes under the total.
Wow, amazing! It was it was that kind of night there, guys, and of course. Not on here, even though they did not cover, was a game Ralph and I highlighted yesterday. That being Iowa, Ralph, who Wisconsin did everything right in that game except win it, Ralph, at the end over there. They really did dominate, certainly early on in the game in the first half. We're doing really good in the second half, right until about the last 2.5, 3 minutes, and then that was it. Kind of Iowa took over, and it was... They came really, really close, but once again, and we've said it, Iowa at home, they are a tough team to beat right now.
Well, you look at Iowa and as a 6-point final, and Wisconsin had a 7-point lead with about 10 minutes to go in that game. And, why was the game so close? Because we talk about McCaffrey and Friedrich and Garza and Weiskamp. Well, Iowa was 3 of 20.
Yeah.
They shot 15% from 3-point, and they still won by 6.
Yep.
So, that tells you moving forward, be cautious of fading Iowa at home unless your team really has some offensive firepower. So Iowa's not going to shoot 15% from 3-point land at home very often. Not
going to happen here, guys. Not at all. And great card tonight here as we've got, I believe, 22 games on tap scheduled, and a lot of big matchups. Big East, Big 12. You got a whole lot going on here, Ralph, and I know you pulled out a couple of trends and angles here before we dive into the marketplace and see who's trending and where. But what are some of the angles you got for us here today?
Did you just leave the biggest upsets off for purpose? Because
there was only one I had on that sheet. I thought we covered it. Did we not? Was that not North Carolina?
I still think it's funny to see that you. That's it.
Right, so yesterday, yeah, it was only one game on it, damn it.
So
we were covering it anyway, so I don't. Yeah, there we go. North Carolina. Yeah, as a matter of fact, I was on.
It's interesting to see though, because granted there were only 7 or 8 regularly line games, but there were still 17 or 18 games. So to only have one upset is still a rarity. So I just think it's funny looking at the I was going to cut the lines and only put one in there, and I said,
there you go.
We have the room. Yeah, they get the perspective that it wasn't a day for upsets.
Yes, no, we had enough of those on. Let's be real. We had enough of that shit on Sunday, so that's good enough to go there. We had 97 upsets by a point or less. I mean, give me a break. It was though last night as well, Ralph. Listen, Wisconsin lost, but they covered. It was 6.5, so it was only a 6-point win for Iowa. So at the very least, if you were backing Wisconsin, at least it was a cover last night. But that's a tough pill to swallow, that's for sure.
Yeah, well, a couple home road teams here. Bowling Green, this one still baffles me because Bowling Green was picked to win the MAC by some people, but they have still failed to cover 11 straight games at home. They're 0-11 ATS at home going back to February 19 of last year. Pittsburgh on the road, 1-11-1 against the spread. Florida is starting to creep up. I think they were 2-13, so they're 2-4 against the spread their last 6. They're 4-17 at home still, something you have to keep attention to. Rutgers, a team we're going to talk about. Rutgers on a 10-1 ATS run. And couple over-unders. Ball State now 1-11 over-under on the road. And Florida, the same team that's 4-7 ATS at home, they're 11-2 over-under. Their offense playing well. We think of Florida in defense from some of those teams past, but looking at power ratings for the last couple weeks, their offense is a top 15 as far as efficiency goes for the Florida Gators.
Interesting. Yeah, Ball State Bowling Green game is going to be very, very interesting. Also, a couple of MAC games here tonight, too, guys. But before we get to our featured matchups of the evening, which I think are going to be Let me see here, Ralph. Who did you put on tap for us here with the big ones?
Well, let's do the market first.
Well, I'll do the market. I just want to make sure I'm highlighting the right one here, so let me just make sure. Okay, so we're going to do Villanova, St. John's, and Purdue, Rutgers. All right, perfect. So some of the other ones that we're starting to see some movement on, and you mentioned it, of course, that Florida-Mississippi State game. Florida in the swamp opened up at 4. They've seen that move to 6.5 now across the board. Another one, too, Ralph, was this, and this was a game I was going to point out. Now, you've been on Akron a couple of times over the last few weeks. I know that. They are taking on a Buffalo team, which I have had a lot of success backing. They've done a really good job, certainly to the overs. But I'm looking at this, Ralph, and while Akron at home is an 8-point favorite, and it's starting to come down, opened up at 8.5, I'm seeing a lot of 7.5s. The total has come down, 163.5 to I'm seeing 157, which is interesting because Buffalo is usually synonymous with, let's speed up the tempo, let's score a ton of points.
Well, Buffalo is. I mean, Buffalo's current tempo is top 10. And Akron's on the faster side as well. Buffalo is actually number 1 now in tempo when their offense is concerned, which means from the time they get the rebound or take the ball out of bounds, they shoot the ball faster than any team in the country.
That's crazy.
They're number 1. They're number 6 in tempo overall when you add in the offense and the defense for their game. So, that's certainly not a team. I disagree with that line move.
Yep.
Akron's offense is playing well. Akron's defense isn't playing well. Akron's offense jumped out against Ohio. I think they had an 18-point lead. I was on Akron minus 4.5 against Ohio. They had an 18 or 20-point halftime lead. And like often happens, they just came out flat in the second half. They were content with that lead. Ohio kept chipping away, and only ended up losing by 2. So, one thing you have to remember is when you're talking with these MAC teams, there are some fierce rivalries. And while Akron has their main rival, Kent State, on deck, that game is Friday. It's still 4 full games away. But it's, Akron's leading the MAC right now. They're 6-1 with Bowling Green. Buffalo's sitting at 4-3, going through, some changes. But Buffalo wins this game tonight, and it's going to put the MAC in a weird position with almost everyone, with a lot of teams eligible to win that conference.
Yeah, it's going to be very interesting. Kent State, Toledo also going on here tonight. How about not a lot of love for Richmond here, Ralph? Richmond almost a terrible bad beat there against Dayton over the weekend, those of you that took the points. But they're on the road. VCU tonight opens up at 7.5, Ralph, and they're not getting any love. It's already up to 9 for VCU. For the Commonwealth to take care of Richmond in this game. Just not getting any love there, Ralph.
Yeah, I like the Richmond team.
Right?
You want to talk about a fierce rivalry. These two teams aren't far away. So, right. In-city rivalry, and it's going to be a war. So, I really don't agree with the line move. When you have these two teams and Richmond's playing, Richmond's playing solid ball. They did lose to Dayton. That clearly could have been a look ahead, but they got a solid offense, a solid defense, and I think they can. I think they can keep it close.
Talk to me about Air Force tonight too. Also opens up as a 4-point home favorite against Fresno State, but. Fresno State seems to be getting a lot of the money. That's been cut in half here, Ralph. So it looks like a lot of Fresno State backers coming in there, not trusting Air Force in this spot.
I am on Air Force. So, I had just released it at the 2.5. And, there's a question mark with Fresno because one of their best players, Nate Grimes, was suspended against Boise. And I don't know if he's playing or not. It's
still up in the air,
the press release doesn't have it. It was a indefinite suspension. Could be a game, could be 2 games, could be 3 games. But I like Air Force even if Grimes plays, and if he doesn't, I like him even more. This Air Force team to me just you're 2-5 in the conference. The only two teams you've beaten were the worst two teams in the conference: San Jose State at home and Wyoming on the road. You're a team with a mediocre offense, mediocre defense. Air Force is off a loss to San Jose State, but they're back at home. Their offense is playing very well. And, while they've lost 3 straight games, it was a road game against San Jose, and then they lost to a better opponent in Utah State and Colorado State at home. So off the 3 straight losses, I think Air Force rebounds.
Air Force 7-1-2 against a number in the last 10 versus Fresno, even though they lost the last time out. But I'm with you. I love Air Force in that matchup. And finally, Ralph, I don't know what to make of Michigan. I don't, and neither does the market apparently, because they seem not to be extremely fond of their scoring ability at this particular point as the total continues to creep down. Opened up at 150. I'm now seeing 144, 144 and a half, Ralph. Taking on a Nebraska team that came this close, Ralph, this close to winning a big game there over the weekend and pulling out the upset. So Michigan on the road, I can't trust them. I mean, they are laying 4.5. Somebody's trusting them. It opened up at 3. It's now 4.5 for them on the road.
I'm not playing them with the suspension. There's no way with Xavier Simpson suspended.
I agree.
I'm not playing on a Big Ten road team as a road favorite without their point guard. So, to me, I don't have enough guts to back Nebraska, but there's no way I'm back in Michigan.
I agree. And, of course, Ralph, some interesting, juicy I'll say it, juicy bits of underdog value on the board here tonight for a limited card. So talk to me. Is there a dog that stuck out to you more than the others here?
Well,
and if you say the team I think you're going to say, I'm going to scream. So go ahead.
It's not a dog. It's basically a pick'em game.
Okay.
But, I think Butler should be a couple-point favorite. They were in a bit of a funk, but I think Butler has the talent to come out of their funk much more than Georgetown does in theirs. And, another dog I looked at, I have to mention Texas A&M. It's a team I've been on, and they lost to Oklahoma State over the weekend, but when they're a sizable dog, they slow the tempo so much. This is a game that's going to be in the 120s, and, you're getting 11 points, and Tennessee's offense has not been efficient. They've been a very defensive team. So, I'm looking at first team to 60 wins, a game with maybe in the 1-teens. So, can A&M get into the 50s to cover? I certainly think so.
I don't know, Ralph. I'm falling in love with this St. John's team, man. What do you think? Villanova seems like an easy layup for Villanova, right? Number 8 team, the Wildcats. I don't know, man. I just don't know. I mean, I do like the Red Storm, and I love what they bring here. I love their efficiency, certainly from scoring in the 2-point range. They attack the rim very well. It's going to be in the Garden. And they got a pretty good backcourt there with Rutherford and Dunn. I think they can create enough havoc there against Villanova, who, what have they won? 6 in a row now? If it wasn't for Providence throwing up on themselves late in the game, they might have lost that one too as well. I don't know. I got a feeling St. John's getting a couple of points here as a live dog tonight.
Yeah, and, Samuel's hurt his foot, so... he's a game time decision. If he goes, he's obviously a big loss for them. So, I look at it on paper and I think Villanova wins the game, but you're grabbing a basket or 2 baskets here. So, Villanova's used to playing close games, and this certainly can be another one. I agree with that.
Yeah, I was going to go Florida State, but of course that flipped. It went from Virginia -1 to Florida State, so I can't go with that one. But we'll tackle that total coming up here in a minute as we dive into. Let's dive into these games. There, we talked at St. John's, Ralph. There are some question marks there. Villanova obviously looking like a team that's top 10, Ralph, to say the least, and it's going to continue to be pretty good for them as long as they can stay healthy and active. But what do you think of it being at the Garden? Do you think it makes a difference there one way or the other?
Well, it used to.
Right.
And probably the only reason that I'm afraid to back Villanova is that, they do have revenge from last year. Mm-hmm. They went into St. John's the last time they played, and they lost 71-65. But, I went back and forth on this game, and I really, I think it's going to be a much lower scoring game. You look at Villanova the last 4 games, mm-hmm. and yes, Providence is a good defense and they were on the road, but they only shot 43.7%. Yes, Butler is a good defense, but they only shot 37.7%. Yes, UConn's a good defense, but they only shot 38.8%. DePaul at home is not a good defense, and they still only shot 43.1%. The defense is what's kept them in the game. So, to me, I'm clearly looking at the under in this game. Again, if the injury is there and Samuels can't go, that adds to the under as well. So, and even the DePaul score, it's sort of skewed because they scored 79 against DePaul, but that was an overtime win at home. Right. So, when I look at this game in the Garden, it adds a specialness to the game, no question, but that also has me leaning with the under.
I will say this, too. St. John's 7-1-1 against the number in the last 9 versus the Wildcats here, so they have certainly had some experience and have done very well against the number in this matchup. So I think that'll be a lot of fun to watch and see how that unfolds here tonight, as will Purdue and Rutgers, Ralph. I don't know how in the world, with good conscience, I mean, and let me take a look at the line, make sure nothing crazy has happened.
Still 3,
here.
I believe.
Yeah,
Rutgers
it's still looking there. Can you trust Purdue on the road to score enough points here? I mean, it's laying 3. It's still at 120 as far as the total goes, but can you trust Purdue to get the job done on the road?
Well, my power ratings say Rutgers would be 4.5-point favorite.
Wow. Damn.
But,
what
you have to remember is this. You said it. They are now ranked for the first time.
Right.
I probably the first time since they've been in the Big Ten. I'm sure they,
it's probably
wins,
it's been a minute.
10 wins, 7 wins,
yep.
15 wins. Yeah, this is a team that hasn't won more than 15 games up until this season. So you go through the beginning of the Big Ten season, and yeah, you may beat Wisconsin and Seton Hall at home back-to-back games, but you're still catching people by surprise. Then if you look at their wins: Nebraska, Penn State, Indiana, Minnesota, Nebraska. Okay, nothing wrong with Penn State, but you still haven't beaten an elite team.
Right.
So you are the surprise team early in the season, and all of a sudden you become ranked. You are number 3 in the Big Ten as far as records go, and you go from the hunter to the hunted. You now have the bullseye on your back, and I think that's a whole different mentality. We saw them off their loss at Iowa. They were a huge favorite against Nebraska. They were down at home against Nebraska as a double-digit favorite, struggled to win that game by 3. So you really have to learn to win as a favorite before you learn to cover as a favorite. So while my power ratings are 4.5, it's clearly a spot where Purdue has been there and done that. If you want to talk value from one season to the next, as I pull this up, and teams get better, teams get worse. There's no question we know about that. But when you look back to last year, Rutgers was a 14-point favorite at Purdue. They were a 15-point favorite in a neutral setting. and they were a 15.5-point favorite last time they hosted Purdue. So has Rutgers really become 21 points better with a home court edge than they were? Maybe. Has Purdue become 21 points worse? No. So you have to find that balance there in the middle where there's value. So it's a game I'm split on. It's an interesting game to talk about for those reasons.
Yeah.
But it's a game where my numbers say Rutgers, but until they beat an elite team at home as a favorite, it's an entirely different thing than pulling some upsets and being a surprise team early in the season.
Yeah, no, the mentality is different for sure. Home team, by the way, guys, the last 4 in this series, they've all covered. So it all about, you want to know who wins against the number? Well, it all depends on who is home, and it's staggering how good they have been at home, Ralph. They're 14-0 at home. They've covered 9 of those of these games, the Scarlet Knights, and it's just so hard for me to pull the trigger on a Purdue team who, has been there, done that, but their road struggles are real. And even so, I don't even know what to do on the total too, because I'm even looking at that, and I'm split on if I trust enough points to be able to come out here to be able to hit the over in this matchup, which isn't a big number, Ralph. It's 120, but it's a struggle.
Yeah, but again, it's. There's going to be a tightness. There's going to be a tightness to Rutgers, which has me thinking the under. Anytime we're talking Purdue now, it has me thinking, the under. And I look at Rutgers now, and you look at their opponents they've played, and Purdue has a top 11 defense. So you go back and the only time Purdue's played a top 20 defense the entire year was Seton Hall game back on December 14th. They did win that 68-48. I mean, right. They did run them out, but let's remember that was the game Miles Powell got hurt about 10 minutes into the game, and then Powell missed a couple games. So it was a Rutgers team that caught Seton Hall by surprise. Seton Hall lost their best player early in the first half, and the game snowballed. So I don't even look at that as them playing a top 20 defense, because they didn't play a top 20 defense without Powell there. So, the matchup-wise, I do like the under when you're looking at that situation. So
best bet time here, Ralph. Where on the card are you looking at the most?
Well, I can't do more than a best bet, Joe, than give out a play that I bet and gave to my customers, and that's Air Force. As I said, I like them either way. I like their offense. They're a difficult defense. They're a difficult offense to defend. Fresno State has not impressed me. Their wins are very weak. Their losses have been bad. On the road, they are shooting under 40%. Air Force shooting over 50% at home. So I will go with the Falcons.
You're going to go with the Falcons. I went back and forth on this. I love Florida State in this game here tonight. I do not trust Virginia, although I do trust them to play defense, but just too much length, too much athleticism. We saw it a couple of weeks ago, Ralph, when they played in Florida there in Tallahassee when Florida State took care of them then. They're kind of in desperation mode right now, Virginia, but I do like Florida State in this matchup, and I do like, I like the over in the Syracuse-Clemson game. I think the number is a little bit on the low side. Syracuse much better offensively on the road than they have been at home, taking on a Clemson team here that has been sporadic, to say the least. Plus, they don't exactly play great defense, but it is a bit of a look-ahead spot here as Duke will be coming to the Carrier Dome on Saturday. So I do think the 134 is a bit of a low number. I'm certainly looking at the over in this Syracuse-Clemson game here tonight.
Again, this isn't the Syracuse teams of past.
Right.
As I go back and look at the last couple of years with Ken Palm's numbers, 2018 season when Syracuse went 23-14, they had the number 135 offense and the number 5 defense. Mm-hmm. Last year, they had the 59 offense and the 30 defense. So significantly better defenses. This year, the number 20 offense and the 116 defense.
That's correct.
So I think you're finding value, Joe, because we're all accustomed to the 2-3 Boeheim zone that absolutely shuts people down. Well, that zone is not good this year. They're top 100. Well, they're not even top 100, Ken Palm.
No.
They're top 100 in field goal percentage. The adjusted efficiency makes them 116, but you do have a very efficient offense. So sneaky play that I think you're getting value with. And I think you're going to get value with Syracuse's totals all the way through the second half of the ACC schedule.
I agree. 11-5, guys, to the over here in our last 16. So Syracuse and the over against Clemson here tonight. And, of course, I want to remind you guys, head over to wagertalk.com. Make sure you head over to Ralph's page there at the Cal Sports page. Plays are up. He's already given you Air Force tonight against Fresno State. Plays available. It is, all sorts of opportunities there, not just today, but tomorrow, all throughout the week in college hoops. Also, make sure you tailing Ralph there on Twitter at CalSportsLV. Always great information being pumped out there. So, Ralph, good luck with the plays, my man. It should be a fun night in college hoops, and we get to recap it all tomorrow and do it all over again, man. So good luck with you.
Joe, talk to you in 23.
You got it, guys. Good luck with your plays, guys. We'll talk to you tomorrow.